And we're live. Welcome to the Gordox Pub, where we serve handcrafted, original creativity. There you go. No AI for us. No digital. Although later on we might get digital. Rich, are you there?
I am. I'm answering my daughter's question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my daughter posted this: a free country doesn't ban books. And I'm like, who's banning books? And she's like, the U.S. And she shows me this clip, but the clip is flawed. It's not the U.S. that's banning books. It's certain schools are banning books.
Oh.
I'm like, the schools are not the U.S. banning books. They're still published. They're still sold in stores, you know. But they're a school can ban books, or in Florida, that was what they were up in arms about because the parents had the right to decide, I don't want my children reading that shit. And I think that's absolutely right. As a parent, that's your job. Your job is to decide what information that your child's allowed to have until your child is old enough to decide for themselves. Right?
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't fall to the schools. It shouldn't be the school's responsibility. It should be yours. And if it's not yours, then if you're not taking responsibility, then you can't complain when somebody else does. But yeah, well, this case is not the same thing. It's not the U.S. banning books. It's some schools banning books, and some of those books are fifth grade level, describing sexual acts that shouldn't be described in school or in a book that you're going to tell kids to read anyway.
Or they flat out depict them.
Yeah, well, and so when I say describing in writing, that is depicting, right?
No,
so,
I mean, some of them are picture books. They flat out show things.
Oh, that's pretty fucking disgusting. I think I would end up hurting somebody if they did that shit to my kid.
And what's funny is, I mean, you and I are not for censorship. Like, if you want to write a book about whatever, we generally don't care. And you should be able to sell it on Amazon and, whatever. But if a school doesn't want to have it, well, if Larry Flint had wanted to send Hustler to every school in the country, would you want kids having access to that? No. Okay. Yeah, well, so you recognize there's a level where censorship's okay.
Now we're just. I don't think it's censorship because here's my reasoning, and I'm probably gonna argue against it, but here's my reasoning. They're not adults. The children are not adults so that they can make decisions of their own free will and eat those repercussions. You see what I mean? So it's not censorship to keep it out of children's hands, whereas it is censorship to keep it out of the hands of an adult that can make up their mind for themselves. So I think there's a fine line there, and I'm not saying that if a kid walks into Barnes and Noble, you can't sell him X book or Y book or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I can understand why schools would say we're not dealing with adults here. We're not giving adults the decision. We're giving kids the decision if we present it to them.
Oh,
So I think there is a distinction there
yeah.
because censorship implies that it's not allowed by anybody or not, you know, not allowed to anybody or whatever. And so you could call it a limited censorship or whatever, but I'm not saying that somebody shouldn't be able to write a book and sell a book, or anybody shouldn't be able to go into Barnes and Nobles or whatever existing brick and mortars there are and buy a book if they choose to and if their parents allow them to. Because some books, some magazines, like you said with Larry Flint, you have to be 18 to buy, and I think that's fine. It's not saying you can't buy it, you just can't buy it yet.
Well, that's what basically I think about a lot of the stuff that you hear people complaining about banned books. It's like they're not taking it off of bookshelves.
I think I got to turn the volume up because I don't hear you very well. I don't know if it's my fault.
Well, they just, I'm saying,
from my volume.
Everyone, well, I have yet to meet anyone, I guess, who doesn't believe in censoring some information from certain audiences. It's just which information and which audience. You know, and I'm no different. There are certain things that aren't appropriate for children. So now, what that line is, I got to decide for my children.
That's exactly what I was saying.
But you know, putting it into a school,
the parents should be deciding.
Yeah, but you know, like I remember, like I've been involved in one of these disputes as a teacher. A student objected to having a book in the library, and the funny part was, so she was a Wiccan girl, and she was upset with the depiction of witches in this book. And she pointed to, there was a picture of a pointy hat and green skin and warty nose and all this stuff. And so she wanted the book removed for that. And the librarian pointed out that if you read the caption next to the picture, it says that this depiction of a witch is a harmful caricature and not a real representation of Wiccan philosophy or religion or something like that. So the book was pointing out what the girl was like. The book was pointing out that this idea of witches being, you know, these ugly old ladies is kind of stupid. And the Wiccan girl was upset that the book was somehow making fun of Wiccans by pointing out that people make fun of them because it's stupid to make fun of them. I don't know. So,
yeah, she wouldn't like my view.
Well, I just find it interesting that how far people, I mean, that the problem is you get people that'll push it way farther on way less. And I'm sorry, but a lot of the people who want to claim that they're again, you know, oh, it's terrible to have, you know, to have schools not having these books, but I can name lots of books that are completely safe that they would throw a fit about because they're from conservatives and they don't like that kind of viewpoint, and they're okay banning that kind of thing. So right. I'll own up to the fact that, yeah, I think there are certain topics and certain images that are not appropriate for some audiences. And I will admit that's a paternalistic kind of thought. I don't care. I find it appropriate. And by being open about the fact that, yeah, I think that, some censorship in some form is okay, but most of it's not. Like you and I have a very broad definition that, as long as you can buy it, it's, you can own it, you can
Right.
publish it. It's not, just because, minors can't purchase it, isn't that big of an issue. I'm sorry, it's not.
Yeah. I don't know. If you're not stopping people from being able to acquire it, I don't
Well, you're
feel like
stopping some people from acquiring.
that's not censorship. You're not stopping them from being able to acquire it. You're stopping them from being able to acquire it in school. They still can acquire it. They just can't acquire it in school. So that's the same thing as saying certain cake maker doesn't want to make cakes that have to do with homosexuality. He is not stopping those homosexuals from going to any other bakery. So he's not, making it impossible for them to buy it. He's just not going to do the service himself. That's not the same thing as making it unavailable for them to do it.
The cake thing is more of a compelled speech issue.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because they were
For years, because I'm as a tattoo artist, for years we had a sign that says I reserve the right to refuse anybody for any reason because I'm a service, and that you don't have to patronize the service. Like it's not like I'm not the electric company and telling you can't get electricity from me. So I think it's the same thing. You're not telling them they can't buy the book, just not there. You can't get it there. You can get it at Barnes and Nobles. You can get it at Amazon.com. You can get it at a whole plethora of other places, just not that particular school. That's not the same thing as saying you can't buy it, you can't have that book, or an underage kid can't read that book. It's saying that you can't read that in my school. You're not going to have access to it in this school. And if the parents are like, this is what I want, I don't want my kids to have access to that, then who are you to tell them no? So I don't think it's actually censorship because you're not telling them they can't get it, it's just not there. And you're not telling taxpayers that they have to pay for it. Especially taxpayers that don't agree with it, right?
okay.
I see a definite distinction there. So granted not everybody may see that distinction, but if you're not making it impossible for them to get, you're not banning it, and you're not censoring it because you still can get it. As an adult, where they can make their own decisions and go wherever they want to, then yeah, I think that is wrong to say that they can't read this or that type of book. It's their own deal, right?
Okay.
But in school, not even as a kid, like I wouldn't approve of it for my kids, but I'm limiting that scope to in school as the decision was made, right? It was about being in school. That's it. Not saying that they can't sell that book in the state to underage or under 18, whatever. They're just saying you can assign it as essential reading for classes in this school. I think that that's beyond the school's purview anyway. I know that's probably going to not be a popular opinion either, but I don't
Uh,
think
I think it's 100%. When you have school choice, it's 100% the school's decision as to what they want to teach. If you don't like it, go somewhere else.
that's fine. And I agree to a point, but I'm saying a public school, who gets their funding from taxes and taxpayers, their purview is not to teach kids about sex.
I agree.
That's what I'm saying. It's beyond their purview. How they choose to teach science or whatever, that's one thing. How they choose to teach English is one thing. But when you're getting into forcing kids to look at and think about sex, especially at ages of 8 to 10 to 12, and 12 they're going to think of it already. Probably they are at 11. But 7, 8, 9, 10, those are ages that they should still be riding their bikes and playing with their toys. You know what I mean? So I'm not trying to be sexist. Whoever, boys and girls can ride their bikes and play with their toys. So, but they should be off on an imaginary adventure and, exciting their minds, not worried about alternative sexual choices when they shouldn't even really be focused on sex anyway. I don't think that's the purview of the schools. I don't think it should be the purview of the school. That also, is an opinion, but that's my opinion. I will fully admit that there are other opinions, and mine aren't always right, but I think on this one, at least for me, they are, or it is. Well, that was not even on the list of subjects that we were going to talk about.
I know. You said you didn't want to argue.
Well, I don't think we're arguing. I just think we have slightly different and really slightly different opinions. Although people that be watching this will have vastly different opinions, right?
I would guess so.
Yeah, well, I guess that they're probably not going to watch very, very long if that's the case, too. So,
Well, I still think that most people who engage in this, let's get a book out of a school library, more of them want to get books out. I mean, there have been plenty of cases where people complain about books that really aren't problematic, but they're conservative, so I guess that makes them problematic. And they have no problem arguing for getting rid of those books, and they see no hypocrisy in the idea that getting rid of those books is a problem.
are they conservative books? Or are they just have conservative values?
Well, they have conservative values.
Well, I asked because I think there's a distinction there too. Like, if a book is pushing politics,
well, you know about Orson Scott Card. There he is. Are you going to tell me that he's a super hardcore conservative?
No, not at all.
And yet, you've had people, they want him canceled. They want his...
Yeah, they want him canceled because he doesn't agree, didn't agree with the term gay marriage. it wasn't even that he didn't agree that they should be able to be legal couples. It, it was hinging on the word marriage because that's a Christian and biblical word.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying it's one of those things where you can, one side will feast on their own when it comes to media, be it movies, TV shows, books, comic books, anything. If you don't fall in line, that's it. And
yeah, right, even on their own is what you were saying. And yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I didn't want to argue that. I was going to agree. So.
I'm just the issue. I think you have to recognize that people are okay saying it's all right to withhold things from children, and the idea that the government is the best arbiter of that is ridiculous. So, if it's your family, if you want them to read stuff and see stuff, well, I don't know. Sometimes that could be flat out illegal. So,
yeah, there's that.
Some of the stuff that's in some of these books that I've seen, and I'm just like, whoa, that's literally showing. I mean, it's a cartoon, it's a drawing, but I'm like, okay, so you're showing children engaged, or at least underage people who cannot consent, engaging in sexual acts.
Well, technically, that's still pornography.
That's what I would argue.
I mean, it's not even an argument. That technically is pornography. And drawings or film, anything that depicts a sexual act, and if it depicts a sexual act with underage people, that's illegal as fuck. Why are they getting away with it?
Well, that is an excellent question.
I knew I had one in me. I knew I had something good just arguing.
So I was on YouTube, and there was some it was a library somewhere that was having a comic convention, sort of, and the librarian that runs it, and she's like, last year we had 9,000 attendees. I'm like, it's not a tiny thing. Or if that's not or if that is tiny, I don't know if I want to go to a real one. But
the attendees at real conventions can be quite high.
Well, I get that, but 9,000 is still pretty good size.
Well, I'm talking 10, 15, 20 times that sometimes.
That's too much. And anyway, but she said comic books were a gateway to literacy, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking I don't agree with that. Well, I don't know if I agree with it or not, because
Well, a gateway is basically an introduction, right? In that usage.
well, I don't know if that's necessarily true or not,
Well,
and it depends on what she means by gateway. But
starts
reading
people
comic
reading.
books, well, no, it's just that there's a different skill in reading comic books. Um, like there you do read those differently. Um, and you pointed out, although it's worse when it's not worse, but it's more difficult. Let's put it that way. Like with manga, when it's going backwards, and it's a skill. And I've seen people who could read not want to read comic books because it was confusing to them.
Regular American comics read left to right, top to bottom, just like anything else.
Oh, that is.
You
only
read here,
partially
you read
true.
here, you read here, you read here. If this is a sentence, you read this. If this is your next one, you read it this way.
There are plenty of examples of layouts that are not as linear as that.
Those are people trying to be more artistic, but for the most part, that's the way they do it.
Yeah, but it can be confusing
It's the Z pattern because that's the way we normally read.
Yeah. Okay. I'm telling you right now, I've read articles on how to read comic books. I've taught articles on how to read comic books. And there's more to it than just left to right, top to bottom. And sequential art is more complicated than that, and it's a
I've
different
read
skill.
comics for years. I've read instructional manuals on how to make comics and why they do what they do. So I don't know. I guess more to the point, I also don't know why you reading in a word bubble
Because the word bubbles
is not the same as reading.
Because the word bubbles aren't always aligned with that left to right.
Not what I said. Not what I said. You're reading words. You're reading sentences in those word bubbles. So why wouldn't that be a gateway to reading? That's what, that's why I'm confused. I started reading comic books.
When I just
I
flat
read
out told
more
you,
books at a time now.
and great, and I read comic books for years.
Okay, you read a lot?
I have no problem with comic books, but
Okay,
there are a lot of people who never read comic books
that's true.
who get
But
into
that's
it.
not the statement. The statement is on its face value is not everybody starts off reading by reading comics. It's a gateway to reading.
Well, then technically anything with a cereal box is a gateway to reading.
Yeah, there's plots in cereal boxes, right?
It's reading, and I'm
But
saying that this
that is an obtuse answer to what I was asked.
well, no, because
Comic books do write forward progression. They write dialogue. They write a story. It may not be in the same format as a normal prose story, but they do write a story. They do tell a story. Cereal boxes generally don't. I guess once in a while, Frankenberry does, or something like that. But for the most part, you're not looking for a story when you're picking up a cereal box, and you are when you look at the comic books.
So again, there's the way you read it can become difficult for a lot of people because it's not as straightforward as typical prose, and because it's not the same, and because people act like it's so childish, you can create. And one of the biggest problems, especially for boys, is that they don't want to be made fun of, and the idea that you can't even read a comic book when comic books can be way more complicated than we give them credit for. I'm not sure. I mean, I suppose you're right. Anything is, I mean, you got to find something that makes you want to read.
Well, I'm not saying it's highbrow reading or whatever.
But I'm
saying, it's an introduction, and no less than Jack and Jill or.
I think it. Well, see, there you go again. We're devaluing the value of comic books when you say it's no worse than Jack and Jill, and it's like
no. I said no less.
Okay, well, I'm saying it's a
when I was saying no less, it wasn't no less of quality. It was no less a starter place, a place to start.
Well, I think
I'm not talking about the judgment of quality in the story. I'm talking about the validity of you starting to read. Whether you start to read with Dick and Jane or Dr. Seuss or comic books, you're starting to read with something.
Yes, but you're equating Dick and Jane by putting it in the same list.
Oh, I'm not. It's just where you start. Like, so where did you start reading? What was the first thing that you had to read in school?
I don't remember the first thing that I had to read in school. I just know that I quickly picked it up. And I was reading before we had to.
They pretty much gave me stuff like Dick and Jane and The Grinch. And I went home and I read Thor. And I went home and I read X-Men. You see what I'm saying? I'm not equating them as quality or whatever. I'm saying that if I hadn't read comics, I probably wouldn't be into reading, because the stories that Dick and Jane were telling and what I was seeing from Dr. Seuss or whatever, they didn't hold my attention. They didn't captivate me. But the images and words together as a combination in comics did.
Okay, put it this way.
And both of them have images and words. Like both examples.
Why would reading comic books not be a sign of literacy versus a gateway to literacy? Because I'm saying that they can become very complicated. They can deal with a lot of complex issues. They can deal with a lot of interesting art. And yeah, there are some that are relatively simplistic, but that's true of any art. And I just think that as opposed to gateway, I would say, hey, if you're reading a bunch of comics and you're following through the storylines and you can sit there and you're reading, Uncanny X-Men, and now you're going to pick up this copy of, I don't know, The Amazing Spider-Man because there's a crossover, and you're going to have to understand how those characters work with the characters you're familiar with. And you're going to have to understand how all the art, all that stuff works and combines. I think that's a way more complicated aspect than people give comic book readers
so you're kind of insulted for everybody.
Well, yeah, kind of. It's not a gateway. It just is literacy.
Oh, I don't know if it's insulting. I don't think it's meant to be insulting, and I'm not hearing insult. I'm hearing that you're taking it as an insult, and I agree that there are very, very serious issues in some comic books. Some of them, again, I don't think should be presented to kids.
That's true.
Because some of the subject matter is, again, of a sexual nature and all that stuff, but it's a free country. They buy them, you know what I mean? It goes back to that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't make it available, but if I was buying comics for my kids and I was buying them for my kids, I would take a look through which ones were selling which stories,
Yep.
But I don't think saying, comics as a gateway to reading is a bad thing. I don't think it is at all. I think it's actually a compliment that's saying that people that read comics generally go on to read more.
Well,
and I don't think that's actually at all saying anything derogatory about comics. So maybe we're viewing it from two different perspectives, because I really don't see that. So,
well, it's not a gateway. It is literature.
Okay.
It's like saying they aren't literature. It's the step before literature, or maybe several steps before you get to literature.
So you by what you're saying now, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, and I'm not trying to argue a point. I'm just asking for clarification. So you don't think that you could teach somebody to read with comics?
That's not what I said.
I just said that I'm not saying that you said that. I said I'm asking for clarification.
You can teach people to read with anything.
I'm not trying to argue. I'm trying to point out, because you just said
you can teach it
means it's where you start. So like it's pre-literature, and I'm saying you don't think that people can learn to read on comics, because that would be the argument against it, right?
No.
Against that claim?
No, but that's like saying I could take anything. Like I could take. They took the Bible for centuries to help people learn to read. It doesn't really, and that's super complex. Learning how to read.
I don't know of anybody that learned to read reading the Bible.
You've never heard the fact that is a hard fact.
I don't know anyone. I'm not saying
we don't do it anymore. Our public schools don't do it anymore. But I
have family. You know what I mean?
They all went to public education. Before you had public schools, there were lots of schools. It was normal. It was a primer based off of the most common alphabetical primer was one that was based on biblical concepts. You started with stuff from the Bible, because the primary reason to teach you to read was not so you could be a thinker. It was so you could read the Bible and be a better Christian.
I thought it was so that you could understand signs and, like signs of places, prices, what things are what.
Nope. That might be why it's great for us to do it now, but I'm telling you right now, it was the reason why.
I understand, but I definitely could be wrong.
The WASP.
You're not saying my own interpretation is the only one.
I'm telling you right now, the WASP background of this country, for a long time, you were taught to read so that you understood the Bible, and that was not just from our country. That comes from Europe. Because why do you need to read books for pleasure or anything like that? This is before you had things like novels, because they were.
So when are you talking about?
What do you mean? What am I talking about? You learned how to.
When are you talking about? Because novels go back a long time. They're written stories go back a long time.
I didn't say written stories. I said a novel. That is something of a certain length.
Well, novel meant an original idea for a story. So
that's not. So quick look up. The first novel is usually credited to be Robinson Crusoe, first published in 1719.
And yet things were written for people to read in the 1600s.
If they weren't novels. I don't understand how, this is basic, this is just going
Okay,
back
so
and looking
you're
at historical
splitting hairs
things.
over the word. You're splitting hair over the word novels, but we're talking
Yes.
about reading. We're talking about reasons for reading. So
Oh God. Okay,
it's
no,
okay
I'm
if
done
it's a
talking about
story,
it.
but
I'm done
not
talking about it, Rich.
it's
I'm
okay if it's a
sorry.
story,
I'm
but
just
not a
done talking
novel,
about
right?
it. I'm
So
done
you're over
talking.
talking me now because you don't
All
like
right,
what I'm
bye.
saying.
I said I was done. I meant I was done.
But I wasn't done. You can be done. You don't have to talk about it, but I wanted to finish what I was saying. Okay. I do not agree that it's a bad thing to think comics is a way into reading. And I do not agree that it has to be a novel for you to read it for pleasure. So much for not finding hot topics. That did not work out well. Water. I guess we turn the music up a little bit. What do you want, son? Yep. Yep. Only one of us. Brett didn't want to hear what I was saying, so he left. It's his prerogative. I'm trying to keep true to the commitment. Yeah, well, it happens. Um, we both have strong personalities, and we both pretty much care a lot about what we're saying or what our opinions are. Sometimes those opinions don't align perfectly, and we don't feel the other person is being fair about what we're saying. And the best solution, apparently, is to stop the conversation. So, he said something. I felt like I had every right to respond to it, and he said he wasn't hearing it, and that's fine. You didn't have to hear it, but that's not going to stop me from saying my piece. And when he found out that wasn't going to stop me from saying my piece, yeah. And I hope he has a better rest of the night than that. I guess like that's all you can do, right? Ironically, we avoided some talking points that we discussed earlier because we didn't want to argue over some trivial shit, and we ended up arguing over some trivial shit. I guess that's the way it works, right? So I'm on my own for a while. Yeah, focus more on drawing. Of course, I'll look up and see if you're commenting, but I'm not going to get off on side tangents because there's no one to get off on side tangents with. Oh, thanks. Yeah, like I was talking about this in the server uh, upshots, which is he's on the ground, but it is still an upshot. You want to be able to foreshorten and to make the proportions look right. And so I only drew the bottom of the nostrils because it's an extreme upshot on his face. So, which I might add is not easy unless you're very accustomed to doing it. So you're watching this stream on YouTube. That means once we're finished, you can go back and see for yourself what happened. Yeah, like, yeah. I don't know. My calming fantasy track didn't do the trick. And now you know. Phew. I didn't think we were mixing Mastiff and politics. I thought we were talking about reading and literature, and maybe I was confused. Matter of fact, I actually don't want to mix Mastiff with politics. I don't want any politics in the book. Just the whole story, you know. If there's politics in the book, I want it to be internal politics, not the politics of today, cleverly disguised as a alternative thought or something. I don't want that involved at all, really. I thought we were talking about reasons to learn to read, and what were the gateways into reading that we experienced or we believed were gateways into reading. Which, I think we found the nigglings of an argument right there, because I didn't take it as an insult that person thought comics were a gateway into reading or an introduction to reading. I thought it was kind of complimentary myself. As so often happens, we have different points of view on this subject. Usually we don't let it affect us that much, and then we have had a couple episodes like this before. One was so bad I actually went back and deleted it, but the irony is, like at the beginning of this, I said I wanted to avoid topics that we were going to fight over, and I didn't think that was a topic we were going to fight over. Yeah, I only just discovered that I was free to do what I wanted boot-wise, because his feet weren't shown in any of the previous panels. So I think that was the drapery was a little bit much on the wrinkles on that spot. Sometimes you don't notice these things until you're right up on them again. Well, I didn't buy these pencils as a set, and I'm not using stab of lead. I'm using the last of my, I think it's Mitsubishi. It's a little bit different. Like I was expecting they were similar. This was just a finer point, but this one actually draws darker with less effort. So it's inherently a softer lead because I have to keep sharpening it. And it doesn't take very much to dull it enough to have to sharpen it again. New travel sharpener. Here's my sharpener, which is just sandpaper. I can shake them really good. I have a pointer, which is a sharpener for this type of pencil. Right here. But it tends to snap my legs more than sharpen my legs. So, and they're too expensive to just keep trying to find one that's not going to break my legs. Ow! Like I'm dealing with mafia pencil sharpeners. They're going to keep breaking my legs. Of course, the mechanical pencils, they're fine enough where you don't have to worry about that. The trick is the type of lead that you use and the effect that you want to get from that lead. Like, I'm using what I'm using because I'm going to end up inking this at some point. And because I'm going to ink it, I don't want to use, I would love to use a 2B lead or something like that on this because they're so soft, they go dark very fast, and I can really easily smudge them to get where I want and then lift what I don't want, the eraser and all that. But when I come in with the Fudenosuke's, it'll clog the tits. So I have to have something that's not going to clog the tits. And technically, I shouldn't be drawing all this black, but I'm kind of a little bit of a control freak when it comes to that. I want to see how it looks before I come in. Like, this is not going to be solid black. These are going to be solid black. This is going to fade to a gray because I'm going to be coloring most of this. I'm going to be coloring in Copics. I might paint a little bit of it, but let me see if I can find if I have any left. I'm pretty sure this is the last one I have, but I may have kept the case. I'll do that if I want to order. Kit. No, I have the Statlers. I didn't keep the other one. I think it's Mitsubishi, actually. I don't know why I didn't keep it. I also have another Statler lead holder, but this one has a red ink. You use colored ink so that you don't have to worry about erasing all these pencil blades, but I thought it would be cool because I don't even know where this is going, but someday someone might want to buy these originals, and I think it would be cool to have the originals with some pencils on it. There's another one too. This I ordered from JetPens.com. Yeah, I think so. Let me look at it. Yep, not the lead. Yeah, it says the lead holder. I see a 4B pack. That's not the one that I'm using. I think I'm using. Let's see. Yeah, the 2mm HP pack. I'm pretty sure. If you're the JetPens, you can get that lead. But you can also get these. This is green. You can get red, blue. But what these do, or they fit in the mechanical pencil. So like I can have colored leads that I can switch out. These are 0.5s. But I'm sure you can get them in 0.7s and larger. Of course, the more obscure, the more expensive. Let's see. It's good to have the original. Yeah. Well, yeah. See, I have a digital drawing program, and I have a tablet monitor tablet, whatever you want to call it, where you actually see what you're drawing and draw on it. I have a XP pen, I think 24.5 or something like that. Or, no, it might have been 16.5. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I have to dig it out because it's been a while. But it doesn't feel the same to me. It doesn't feel the same drawing on it. I don't. I don't know. I like having something physical. I'm not opposed to drawing on it, and I've done like a couple of book covers on it, and I've done some comic illustration for some independent stuff. But I don't know. I like to manipulate paint for real instead of on that. It doesn't manipulate the same way on that. I mean, it has some of the same effects. Like you can do watercolor and have some of the same effects, but it's not the same as being able to layer that watercolor and get a look that's almost like oil, which I've been able to do a couple of times. I can do it in such a way also where it looks like it's mixed medium, so you can tell like the background's watercolor or whatever, but the foreground doesn't necessarily look like watercolors. I like that too. I put a reference up in the fan server because somebody was doing a Ghost Rider page. I guess they're doing some sample pages with Ghost Rider, and asked for a critique. And I asked them how deep of a critique they wanted, and they said as deep as you can do because I want to learn. So I gave them a pretty deep critique. And he had Ghost Rider, but his gloves were pretty plain. Like you can see the edge of his knuckles, or you could see that he was using feathering lines to show where the light was turning away. But didn't have any of the drapery wrinkles and stuff. So I sent him a reference for a pair of gloves, and I actually grabbed a reference for myself for a pair of gloves because I didn't finish this part yet because I wanted a reference for the wrinkles. So, you know, I'm not telling someone to do anything that I'm not going to do. But I just haven't gotten to it. And I've got to go back, and I decided, I think on this page, that I wanted it best to have that kind of texture to it. So I've got to go back to the earlier pages and finish it off. It's kind of why I left some of this stuff open, because I hadn't made all the decisions yet, and this part is not it's kind of integral to the story, but it's not going to ever be repeated, and you're not going to see any of these characters again, and it's kind of a one-time scene. The character you're going to see again is this guy, which I didn't want to show his face yet. I don't know why. Like, I have no problem introducing a bad guy first in the story. But that's where he wanted it. So I try to comply. Golden fluids are expensive. I, uh, they're, I don't know. I don't think they're that expensive because you can buy, like, so you're talking about golden fluids, which I have maybe about 9 or 10 of them. The trick with that paint is that if you know how to make your colors, if you know how to mix your colors and blend to get those colors, you can have a significantly less amount of actual colors. You don't have to buy them all. And I generally buy them two at a time as I get a chance. But if I've got a commission, which is a lot of what I've been painting lately is commission stuff, and if I've got a commission, usually I'm buying what I need for that commission, and I've got a bunch extra, and the commission covers the cost. So. That is another issue, but I generally was using, for the women's warriors, I think I used a couple of fluids later on, but most of what I use is golden opens. Well, see, there's a difference too. Like, depending on the type of Liquitex you're buying. So, the golden opens, they are basically they're basically like oils. You can manipulate them for a long time. They don't dry very quickly. Yeah, so heavy body. Two things that might help you. And I really don't know how to use them, but I do know that you got to get into the swing of them. Like, I did that gargoyle with golden fluids, and I hadn't used regular acrylics in so long that I forgot how fast they dried. So you can use water and thin them down a little bit, and it'll slow the drying process down. Or golden and in Liquitex. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, right here. Liquitex. That's acrylic medium. Oh, this is gesso, no more. But there's an acrylic medium for that. I have some Liquitex here, so I have to shuffle things around because I've got quite a pile of stuff going on. I did a whole entire cast of characters for a comic that we never ended up starting, or I did that one cover picture for it, and that's it. Let's see. I know. There we go. So Liquitex, there are two. There is a glazing medium, which it thins it out a little bit, or you can use it for kind of a clear coat. And then this is a slow dry medium. And the slow dry medium makes the Liquitex so they can stay malleable longer. But when I use Liquitex, I use the soft bodies. That's what Joe Jusko recommended, and I'm telling you, there's a huge difference between soft bodies and hard bodies in the way it spreads, depending too on the surface that you're painting on, but the way it spreads and the consistency of it. Because the hard bodies, obviously it says hard, but it's more like working with a clay. This is less like a clay, not quite liquid, but less like a clay. Let's see if I can find the medium for. It's knocking around there. Okay, so like, yeah, as far as gold is really, the fluids, they're not big. I only have so many of them. Have them as I need them, and I blend them and mix them to what I need it for. And I just use water to thin them down, or and this wasn't made for the fluid mediums, but it's made for the open, but it is the same thing. It's a thinning medium, and you can use this in the regular fluid mediums, and it will slow down the drying process so that you can mix it and blend it and stuff on canvas. And also, I don't know if you saw it, but when I did the Rhino, I was still adding different processes too. Like I was blending with my finger and then highlighting over it, so I could thin it, blend it with my finger, and then highlight over it. You're not limited to using just a brush or just type of brushes or just a type of canvas or whatever. And just whatever you're using, you need to make sure that the surface is prepared to accept what you're using. Like I could use watercolors on this, no problem, but it'd be probably better off to tape this down, because the water will actually warp the board if you don't. And if you tape it down and then you let it dry before you peel that tape up off of it, it will flatten back out. Yeah, so, right. That's not true. First of all, it's not true that you are necessarily diluting the pigment to a point that it's gonna, lose the ability to be a pigment. When it dries, it dries. It's just a thinner coat. But that's exactly what you're looking for when you're thinning it. You want a thinner coat. Michael Whelan, that's his method. He actually takes camera caps, and I've got a couple of little okay, that's not gonna be cool. And I'll just find some stuff. You get these little plastic things for like for a buck and a half at a dollar store or something, and they've got a lid. So Michael Whalen will put whatever he's putting in here and then mix it with whatever amount of water he wants, or mix it to the color that he wants, and keep them stored like this for use later on. I try to keep reading different artists' methods, because not every artist's method is going to work for every artist. And it depends on the look that you want, the feel that you want, the stuff that you're working on, like the medium that you're working with and the medium that you're working on. When I paint, a lot of the times that I'm painting on masonite, gessoed masonite, because it is relatively a light texture, and I can get smooth blends that I want to with it also. The vinyl that I painted was on Arctic watercolor paper. That's not cheap, but it's really good paper. And I noticed enough of a difference with working on it with acrylics that I felt comfortable not having to worry about gessoing it. So yeah, I think all of us, I think most of us that are good pencilers are really nervous about inking, because we don't want to mess it up, and we're so used to being able to erase or go back into it or whatever. And another thing is too that depending on how you pencil, I mean, like, you don't have to pencil feather lines. Like, I'm not penciling feather lines right here. Most of this doesn't have feathering lines, and there's a little bit in here or here. There's a couple of them here just to show which way the muscle's turning, because you don't want to over muscle a female arm, because then it looks like a male arm. So I would say decide how you want to ink it, how you want the overall look to be, the end look, because you don't have to make it look like Jim Lee with all those scroll lines. You don't have to have all the feathering lines and all the cross-hatching lines. You don't have to have it look like David's to look good. Hell, if you look at Ron Gurney's work, a lot of that is very messy looking. If you look at Sean Gordon Murphy's work, he does a lot of just careless black, and then just comes back in later on with whites. And we've probably been seeing enough of either David's videos or Jim Lee's videos or any of those guys to know that whiteout is the key to a lot of stuff. But I really liked how Frank Miller, when he was doing Sin City, went from a lot of feathering lines to practically no feathering lines. Only a very, very few. Most of it he just did in solid black and white. And I like that look. And if you look at like manga, which is really the dominating form of comic right now, a lot of that doesn't have a whole lot of scroll lines either. The lines that you're seeing are speed lines and motion lines, but you're not really seeing a whole lot of cross-hatching and feathering lines. So it's really intimidating to think about inking when you're thinking about having to do different feathering and cross-hatching lines, because you want some line variation and it not to look flat. And you'll see a lot of people that are posting in the fan server that they do the same lines, like they cross-hatch, but all the cross-hatching, all of it is the same direction, the same width, the same space apart. And yeah, like in manga, a lot of it you either see gray washes, and that's a lot of them do gray washes, or they're painted in color, right? And they're painted like much more like anime, where you're not trying to paint realistically, you're trying to paint in a kind of representative type of way. Now I'm losing the word that I want, but it's more indicated than detailed like that, because also in reality your eyes don't pick up all that little detail, so sometimes it's hard to try to create that detail. And when you're doing cross-hatching and feathering, you're really trying to show where the mid-tones are, where you're turning into the light. So as you're gradually getting away from the darkness. And that's why people tend to overdo those lines, is because they're not considering the other stages of the comic book. And you don't have to have that super tight level of control to get that effect, to see where it's turning out of the darkness or into the darkness, or how it's three-dimensional. You can do that a lot with solid blacks and solid whites. That contrasts a lot of times. And you can use contrast to your advantage with solid blacks and solid whites. So I guess what I'm overall saying, the too long didn't listen version would be, don't be afraid of inks, because you can do them as simply as you want to. The key with comics is you're telling a story, and you want readability, so people look at what you're drawing or what you're inking and know what's going on from what they see. Well, okay, so bring up line weight. That's a good topic, because a lot of people misunderstand what line weight is actually about. And they say, so this is on the underside of the light, so this needs to be a thicker line, and then as it turns up into the light, as it turns up into the light, it needs to be thinner, because that it turns up into the light, and that's where you're representing with the line weight, when that's not necessarily true. I was showing that on the first page of this, that this can be a thin line, and this entire thing can be a thick line, and the line weight in that case is distinguishing what's foreground from what's background. So that's what I'm doing in this panel. Just trying to establish that he's on the ground some distance and this is a much closer. It also helps alleviate some of the concern about tangents, which you hear me talk about quite a bit. Like I've been erasing stuff and worried about what's tangents. And if that's a big bold line right across there, the thin lines that are touching up to it aren't going to be as confusable for it because they're not big bold lines to match. They can be, clean, solid lines or whatever, but it's all about reading the action and believability. Since I intend to come back through here and ink it with one thing and then color it, do black and gray scale work with Copics, then I'm a little less concerned with trying to put feathering lines in to show the gradation, because I'm going to do that in scale. Hopefully believably. That's the key, right? You want to make that gradation believable no matter what you're doing. I won't be looking at photos and stuff for that. I looked at photos for reference to line this up or set this up. And by the time I get to inking it and using the Copics, it should be pretty obvious where the light sources are and where the textures are. It helps to have the point on the pencil, especially. Producing finer lines. How's that read? Then what's the point? I don't know if I caught what that's in relation to. Last time I looked up, it wasn't there. Cool. I'll be judgmental of it later on. I'll be looking at it and going, no, that's good. But I can't see it from you guys' perspective, so it's always nice to know I'm on the right track from that angle. I have a habit of running over and over and over until it gets dark as I want it. So X is like in here and then it's black, so well, I'm glad I didn't. That was to my wife was cleaning the floor behind me. Said I almost rolled over her, like almost rolled over her fingers. That would be suck.
Thanks for not.
Yeah. Well, that's not the intent.
Yeah, I just wanted to clean up that carpet mess that I made, and I spilled the bottle. And these are the floor. So now we have a non-stick floor.
Cool, we have a non-stick floor. That means that the dog's going to be sliding all around.
Right. Jeez, I hate this one. Yeah, watch out.
All right, well, thanks for visiting, man. I think I'm going to be out for the night in about 5 minutes. I'm just trying to use some dimensionality to the floor a little bit. Probably don't have to, but I kind of feel like should be some consistency. Now we'll see if one end will be perfect. And the dark part up here ain't going to stay. But fucking brilliant. Okay. Oh. Max, for the most part, page 3. There might be wiggle around on some background here and there. That is the storytelling part. So, everybody who stayed the whole time, even though I was by myself and quiet and dry. Everyone that liked, followed, and commented. Thank you very much. Good night. God bless.